A desert is a barren area of land where little precipitation occurs and consequently living conditions are hostile for plant and animal life. About one-third of the land surface of the world is arid or semi-arid. This includes much of the polar regions where little precipitation occurs and which are sometimes called polar deserts or cold deserts. Most large deserts are found away from the coast in areas where moisture from the ocean rarely reaches. Some deserts, however, are located on the west coast of continents, such as the Namib in Africa or the Atacama in Chile, forming coastal fog deserts whose aridity is the result of cold oceanic currents. Many deserts are found in bands along 30 degrees latitude north and 30 degrees latitude south. Some deserts located by mountains are caused by the rain shadow effect. As air moves up over a mountain range, it gets cold and loses the ability to hold moisture, so it rains or snows. When the air moves down the other side of the mountain, it gets warmer. Warm air can hold lots of moisture, so it doesn't rain as much, and a desert is formed. Deserts are formed by weathering processes as large variations in temperature between day and night put strains on the rocks, which consequently break in pieces. Although rain seldom occurs in deserts, there are occasional downpours that can result in flash floods. Rain falling on hot rocks can cause them to shatter, and the resulting fragments and rubble strewn over the desert floor is further eroded by the wind. This picks up particles of sand and dust and wafts them aloft in sand or dust storms. Wind-blown sand grains striking any solid object in their path can abrade the surface. Rocks are smoothed down, and the wind sorts sand into uniform deposits. The grains end up as level sheets of sand or are piled high in billowing sand dunes. Other deserts are flat, stony plains where all the fine material has been blown away and the surface consists of a mosaic of smooth stones. These areas are known as desert pavements, and little further erosion takes place.
Areas with sparse vegetation often experience strong winds, which pick up light surface materials such as silt, clay, or sand, and carry them in suspension. Sand is only carried in suspension when winds are strong, but usually remain closer to the ground and move through saltation, a method of transport in which particles bounce and roll along the ground. Silt and clay are too soft to abrade the rocks, but sand easily grind and score rock surfaces. Evidence of the destruction of sand is seen in the mushroom-shaped rock called toadstools. Deflation refers to the removal of rock waste from the land by the wind blowing away sand so that the underlying rock becomes exposed. Deflations create deep depressions called blowouts. Some blowouts are deep enough to reach the water table and will contain water for most of the years. Deserts lack surface water, but aquifers deep below the sands exist. Desert oases are formed from these depressions when a spring line from an underground aquifer supplies the water. Rain in deserts are rare, but when they do come in the form of a sudden downpour. With little to no vegetation supporting the soil, most of the rainwater rushes down valleys, carrying sediments towards the valley floor. When the water reaches flatland, the velocity is reduced and deposition occurs. The results are the debris spreading out, creating a fan-shaped depositional feature called an alluvial fan.
What are sand dunes, and how do they form? When wind causes sand to blow over a desert landscape, some of the sand may collect against objects such as boulders or small plants. Over time, this collection of sand will start to form sand dunes. Positive effects of sand dunes include being able to protect beaches from erosion and returning sand to the eroded beaches. As the sand dunes grow, it slows the velocity of wind, and thus more deposition takes place, and the sand dune continuously gets larger. For these reasons, sand dunes are most commonly found in deserts with strong winds and an abundance of sand. So how does vegetation establish itself on sand dunes? A large problem that areas with roads, buildings, and parking lots face is dune migration. This is where sand is blown over the dune and falls along the slip face of the dune into these areas. The problem arises in the amount of money it requires to clear the sand from these roads and parking lots. To solve this problem, vegetation is planted to slow the wind. However, in desert climates, obviously, most vegetation does not grow well and is often overtaken by the migrating sand. Plants that are planted in these environments must tolerate salt spray, strong winds, and burial by the sand. A specific plant named the Cape American beachgrass can be the most effective plant in terms of stabilizing existing dunes. They reduce wind velocity near the ground and trap sand that is blown to them. As the sand deposits accumulate, the plants grow in response, all whilst maintaining a protective cover. So these plants are very effective at protecting sand dunes. So real examples of threats to sand dunes and their importance. Sand dunes have a very beneficial role to the environment in a number of ways. They provide habitats to many species, including rare and endangered ones. Sand dunes also protect inland areas from coastal water disturbances, while providing protection as a barrier to wind and waves. Lastly, they are essential to the long-term sustainability of beaches. Unfortunately, sand dunes and coastal dunes in particular are highly sensitive to many human activities. Sand dunes face eroding and sediment loss due to human activities such as trampling, off-road vehicles, construction of roads and houses, etc.
An example of a desert would be the Gobi Desert, the largest desert in Asia. The Gobi Desert is expanding at an alarming rate in a process known as desertification. Because of the rapid expansion, dust storms have occurred more recently in the past 20 years. The expansion of the Gobi Desert is attributed mostly to human activities such as overgrazing, off-roading, and the depletion of water resources. The most recent rescue plan involves the planting of the Green Wall of China, a huge ring of newly planted forests.